I want to talk today about the luxury of choice and having the ability to say no either to a project or to a job. And it's something you're going to have to figure out. And I just want to talk about my experience with having the luxury of choice and also instances where I've said no to things in software engineering. So when it comes to choice, you're left with probably as few choices as possible when you're just starting into this career. When you start your first, when you start looking for your first software engineering job, unfortunately, sometimes you don't have the luxury of choice. At least I didn't. I didn't have all these options. I didn't have all these offers, and I wasn't even looking that much for remote. I was interviewing for a remote job, and I didn't end up getting it. I got to the technical interview. I think that was like two or three interviews in, and it just didn't work out. I didn't wasn't able to answer some of the questions, and I didn't move forward in that process. I didn't get an offer. So then I was in a spot where I was left to really just search for jobs in the area that I was living at the time because I had applied to other remote positions. But if you ever applied to remote positions, you know that so do a lot of other people. And sometimes when you're starting out as a junior dev, you're not going to get that because so many people apply because they want remote. And so I was really left with one option, and if I didn't get that option, then I didn't know what I was going to do because I was moving into a new area. I was getting married, and I had to get a job. So I had no choice, right? If I got an offer from this place, I had to take it, right? I didn't have any other options, and I had been applying to many places. Just I either didn't hear back from most of them, or didn't get picked for a lot of them, or I didn't get through the interview process. But this interview process, I did get through, and I ended up getting an offer. But I was faced with the problem of I didn't have really a choice. I didn't have a choice of whether I wanted to work remotely. I had to go in the office 5 days a week, and make a long 30-plus minute commute into the city, into downtown. And looking back on it, I think that we all have to do that just to get our kind of foot in the door and just to build up that experience. Um, so that was an instance where I didn't have any luxury of choice. That was my only option to take. I didn't have any other counter offers or anything. Later on down the road, after I got some years experience, I began to get the luxury of choice a little bit when it came to how I interviewed with places and which places I applied to, and I was able to be a little more selective about some places. Uh, so when I as I got further into my career, um, I was in a couple interviews. I was interviewing with two companies, and I just didn't get a good feel with them. One of them required pretty extensive travel, about 4 times a year, which was just not. It just wasn't something I wanted to do at the time. And another one I think was like a startup, and I just wasn't getting a good feel from it. It just kind of seemed like not super interesting, and startups, they're just inherently unstable. So I was able to say no to both of those, so I stopped the process. I'm like, hey, appreciate all the time that people have spent interviewing and going through this process, but I just don't think that this is the right fit for me. So I dropped out of those processes. But looking back on it, well, one, I'm glad I did, and but looking back on it is, I think it's just good experience to have that ability to get the confidence to be able to get in interviews and finally move past of the feeling like I was just stuck with what the only option I had. It's nice to feel like you have options, meaning like as you get experience, it's nice to feel like you have a say and you have a voice in where you work and what you work on. And I think that that's really the big positive and motivating thing for me is that as I'm continuing on this path, and it's not like I've been doing this for that long. Like professionally is like 5.5 close to 6 years. It's like not even that long, but I can see that this luxury of choice is just getting more available, as one way to put it. Meaning, like I can begin to be a little more selective, or you know, begin to really ask myself, well, what am I looking for? What do I want to do? And that's really been powerful, I think, for me. But the ability to say no is also huge, because when I first started out, I couldn't say no. But now I can, because I'm not in the same spot. I have more experience, more leverage on my side to help me get get more things. And I think that, as hopefully people watching this or listening to this, if you're just starting out, like if you're looking for your first junior developer position, don't be discouraged if you're not getting a lot of if you're not getting anything, or if you're not getting offers and you feel like you're just applying all day for hours and hours. I've been there. I applied for hours every day for months and just heard nothing, and I just kept doing it. And just the reality is you're not going to hear back from most places you apply to. Even still, it's like companies just post listings, and sometimes they don't even accept offers or accept applicants for the listing. They just post listing, and then they take it down because of some budget cut or restructuring or whatever they're doing. And that'll happen. That's very common. But don't be discouraged if you're just not hearing anything. Just continue the process. Just continue applying, reaching out to people, and doing whatever you can. But if you do get an offer, you're going to have to weigh the cost. You're going to have to weigh, for yourself, how important is it to get other offers, um, in addition to the one that you got. And you're going to have to figure that out for yourself, because for me, I got an offer about a week after I got a rejection from another company I was interviewing with. So I got an offer from the only option that I still had. And so I decided to take it. I decided to not wait and see. And if you decide to wait and see, then you have to be careful of when you counter offer, because that's technically like a rejection, right? So you have to say, hey, like, you have to let them know, is basically what I'm saying. And obviously you have to, ask them when you want them. Like, obviously you have to ask when you can let them know by, right? That's a normal thing to say, right? Nobody's just going to say, yes on the spot. Like, it's a careful thing you have to think about and talk about, negotiate. So, but if you don't have any other offers on the table, and you get one, you have to decide, then in your mind, am I going to take this one and say yes to the only option I have, or am I going to wait and see to see if any other place that I applied to is going to send me an offer? And it gets tricky, because if you're only in around like two or three of the interviews, uh, at another place, there's not even a guarantee that you're going to get an offer. You can get to the very end, and they might cut the job. Like, it happens. So you have to be careful about that. So don't be discouraged if you just take the first one you get. That's what I did. Looking back on it, for me, it got my foot in the door. I got a lot of experience, and I would say it was overall positive. Obviously, there was some negative aspects, but I would say it got my foot in the door. And now, I wouldn't take the same approach personally. Meaning I wouldn't just take the first one that I got. But if you're in that spot again, I completely remember being there, and it's a scary time. It really is, and I think it's only getting worse, unfortunately. Um, so if you get one, then I think it's great. Obviously, make sure that it's not like a sketchy place, or like, make sure it's a legitimate option, I guess is what I'm saying. Um, but you might have to remember that you might not have the luxury of choice when you first start out. It's just a possible reality for you. And when you get years experience, you should get the luxury of choice. for where you want to work and what you work on. Um, for me, I would say that don't I would say that I've kind of picked more or less the technology stack that I want to work in. I really like .NET. I really want to specialize in .NET. And then there's certain JavaScript frameworks that I like to use. React being one of them is my main one. Um, and I can't see myself now making any kind of jump to a different technology stack. I just it requires such a huge just amount of mental power and like mental energy to completely change from one framework. And let's say, I was going to go over and do Java, right? That's just a massive change, and I'm not really trying to do that. But technology switching often is associated with kind of luxury of choice. Like, what are you willing to? I dropped my pen. What are you willing to give up? What technologies are you willing to abandon to in order to get a choice of where you work? Um, it's these all the things you're gonna have to weigh. So it's helpful to make like a spreadsheet or make a list of like your non-negotiables. What are you willing to negotiate on? What are you trying to learn professionally? Where are you trying to grow personally? And just pick and just get really good at something. Um, and I think hopefully now I'm talking to myself now, but hopefully as I get older and hopefully as I get more experience, um, I can continue to not only learn as much as I can, but what I'll tell you what I wanted to say is I want to continue learning .NET and becoming the best I can be, but I want to continue branching off more into system design and architecture, the architecture aspects of it. Like I love to be able to come into a system and just kind of work up like a diagram or an architecture diagram of an existing system and identify bottlenecks and potential solutions to the bottlenecks. That's just really fun for me, and I think the more I've gotten to do that, the more I've enjoyed that. So hopefully that brings a broader scope of work that I can do in the future. And I shouldn't say that when you switch, when you're looking for a new role or you're looking for a new technology stack or anything, it doesn't even have to be at another company. If your company is open to you switching teams or departments, you should bring that up and ask and say, hey, I really want to learn this, this new thing. And I noticed like this team over here is doing that and they have an open position for a lead engineer or a senior engineer. Can I talk to that team and discuss like potentially switching? Because that's going to allow you to stay where you're at, especially if you're happy, and just move to the technology stack that you want to. That's like best case scenario, I think. Um, and for me, I'm really happy where I'm at now. So I'm hoping that that would be like the best thing that would happen in the future. Is at least what I would picture as of now if I was ever going to choose to like do a new technology stack or something. So explore that option too. You don't have to just like start applying to new places and stuff like that. Just have the conversation. You never know what'll come out of it. So anyway, that's it for today. I'll see you next one.